glorious gamers out there. Welcome to the PlayersToo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can find PlayersToo on all the social media, that is Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com, that's PlayerStoo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, that really helps us out. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. And while you're over there, if you could leave us a little review as well, again, that just helps us out even more. And thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. It genuinely means a huge amount. And you are an absolute legend to us. All right, and on with the show. My name is Mark Henderson. With me, as always, Mr. Lewis Camley. How's it going, Lewis?
Going very well, Mark. How are you getting on yourself?
Not bad at all. Very ready to talk about some video games, Lewis. What have you been playing this week?
Just more Elden Ring, Mark.
Of course it is.
It's going to be the same answer for some time. Yeah, I've not had tons of time this week to play it, and we're recording a day earlier than we normally would, so Monday night.
Exactly. Well, I have to say as well that it is almost bound to happen that an enormous news item is going to happen on Tuesday when we would normally record, because you, dear listener, will be hearing this on the same day it would normally come out, but we are recording a day early because I have to record on a different day for various reasons.
Mark's got plans for once in his life.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's bound to be a huge news item, so I'm just cutting that off at the pass right now. If something enormous happens on the 12th of April in the video game space, we have not covered it because we are recording a day early.
Getting our excuses in early.
Absolutely.
And that is my excuse as well. I've played a fair bit of Elden Ring this week, but I do often use Monday night as my last moment of cramming in some hours before we record the podcast, so I've not had that opportunity this week. But yeah, just kind of similar to what I was saying last week, really, Mark. I'm still in a point of Elden Ring where I'm in these more designed, FromSoft spaces, a proper castle with all sorts of twists and turns and secret ways and ledges that you might happen to jump off and find a completely different section and a new route into an area. Essentially, it's Stormvale Castle. It's one of the first proper areas you'll come to. I don't think that counts as a spoiler, really. And I've now reached the end boss of the zone. The whole castle kind of begins with a boss, which I mentioned last week, and then finishes with a different and very difficult boss, which I'm kind of semi-stuck on at the moment. I haven't given it too many tries, but I got to a point where I was like, I'm struggling to get him onto the second phase, and I'm not left with too much health when I get there, so I'm just going to disappear for a bit and upgrade. And I actually travelled back to the kind of southern point of the map from where you begin the game and found a couple of things that are really going to help me in that fight, essentially that are putting my health regen up quite a bit. So that's exciting. I'm going to go and take on that boss, and then once that's out of the way, I'll be into this entire new map zone that I haven't experienced at all yet, which is going to be really exciting. So yeah, just loving it. I've totally fallen for it. I've had that moment a couple of nights ago where I realised I was thinking about it all night, even when I wasn't playing it, which is a great place to be in with FromSoft games. So looking forward to playing some more. I will be playing it for some time. I do intend on breaking it up a wee bit with some smaller games as well, just because I do expect it's going to be a sort of 100-hour session, but I'll get there eventually, and I'll get to the end, no doubt. What about yourself, Mark? What have you been playing?
Well, Lewis, I also quite unexcitingly have basically just been finishing Horizon Forbidden West, which I have now done. I have now completed the game, rolled credits on it. Everything about the game, really, Lewis, is pretty top-notch, I have to say. The story concluded pretty well, very satisfactory, and set up a sequel very nicely as well, so there's definitely going to be at least 3 in the series, which is very, very exciting. I will say that by the time I got to the final boss, keeping in mind that I was doing all the side missions, like I pretty much cleared the map as much as I could reasonably do, or could reasonably be bothered with, frankly. Done all the story missions and whatever on the lead up to the final boss and whatever. I'd maxed out my level a long time before I actually got to the final boss. So I was a little bit OP for those fights, which made them fall a little bit flat, if I'm being brutally honest, but this is light criticism, I would say. It was a very, very good game. I thoroughly enjoyed the experience. I wouldn't be scared of knocking this up to hard mode, if I was totally honest. I just played it on normal, but I did find that as you get more and more OP, once you start hitting max level, it might be worth it for you to up the difficulty, maybe even just up the difficulty at that point, because the game is by no means easy, to be clear, but at the same time, you can get through most things without it being overwhelmingly difficult. You know what I mean? You would go into most fights pretty confident, even against big machines and stuff like that, Overall, absolutely fantastic game. One of the best open world games that I've played in a very, very, very long time. If you have a PlayStation, I would massively recommend checking it out. But honestly, I am quite looking forward to giving myself a little break, Lewis, and I think that I have to reintroduce the gaming break because it was something that I used to do quite a lot, particularly when I was finishing big games like this. I don't really feel as though I've done that for a long time. I feel as though I've been forced to take breaks for various reasons, but I've never consciously taken a break, which is a different thing, you know? And then I'm also going to be getting stuck into Elden Ring as well, Lewis. So we're going to be the Elden Ring podcast for quite a long period of time. We'll both have to think of something interesting to say, but different about the game every week.
Yeah, well, in my experience, I don't think that'll be too difficult because, we can take entirely different paths, unlike in a game like Bloodborne or whatever. But yeah, I do, as I was saying when I was speaking, that I think that at some point I'll break up my playthrough of Elden Ring a wee bit, just because the hours that you put into Horizon might be even half of what it's going to take to fully kind of get through Elden Ring. So I don't think I'm going to want to play it that solidly for that amount of time. And particularly with our play-along games, I think smaller indie games like that can really kind of, I don't know, revitalise your interest in even in the big game that you're playing, because it sort of takes you out. You said the same thing
exactly.
About the Pathless,
exactly the same thing about the Pathless. I have never thought that playing an indie game in the middle of playing a big RPG like that was a better decision than that, because honestly I came back with the energy for Horizon again, do you know what I mean? Whereas I felt as though I was sort of losing the energy before, then I came back to it totally revitalised. Yeah, so I'd highly recommend that, and I will probably take the same approach when it comes to Elden Ring as well, because it's going to take a long time, a long time.
Oh yeah. Good to get you playing it though. I'm really keen to see what you make of it.
There's almost no way that I don't like it, so I wouldn't be ready for anything extreme, I would put it that way. Alright, Liz, I think it's time for the news. Alright, Lewis, news item number 1. It has been announced that Sony have invested an additional $1 billion into Epic Games. Sony have been a minority stakeholder in Epic since July 2020, when it was announced that they had made a $450 million investment, which was big at the time, but now they've invested another $1 billion. Kirkby, which is the holding and investment company behind the Lego Group, have also invested $1 billion in Epic. This follows the announcement of a long-term partnership between Lego and Epic, which aims to make Epic's upcoming metaverse, quote-unquote, safe for kids. Good luck with that, I would say. And it seems that the whole purpose of this additional funding push that Epic have been doing is to accelerate their plans for a metaverse of some description. We'll come back to the metaverse plan in a minute, Liz, but for the time being, let's have a couple of statements here. Firstly, from Sony CEO Kenichiro Yoshida, and secondly from Epic CEO Tim Sweeney.
So Yoshida said, "As a creative entertainment company, we're thrilled to invest in Epic to deepen our relationship in the metaverse field, a space where creators and users share their time. We're also confident that Epic's expertise, including their powerful game engine, combined with Sony's technologies, will accelerate our various efforts, such as the development of new digital fan experiences in sports and our virtual production initiatives." And Tim Sweeney added, "As we reimagine the future of entertainment and play, we need partners who share our vision. We have found this in our partnership with Sony and Kirkby. This investment will accelerate our work to build the metaverse and create spaces where players can have fun with friends, brands can build creative and immersive experiences, and creators can build a community and thrive."
After this round of funding, Epic will now be worth $31.5 billion, and Sony's total stake of $1.45 billion amounts to sort of 4.6% of Epic. But Lewis, before we also get to the metaverse stuff, again, just pushing that down the road as far as I possibly can, what do you think that this means for PlayStation gamers? Do you actually think there is a tangible result for PlayStation gamers from this investment?
Honestly, not really. I don't think we've seen a great deal emerge from it from Sony's kind of earlier investments in Epic, if anything at all. And obviously, as you say, we'll come on to the actual kind of metaverse part of it in a minute. But if anything at all, I think we're just more likely to see kind of Sony tie-ins with Epic products, i.e. Sony characters in Fortnite and stuff like that. I don't really see it doing very much more than that. On the flip side, I don't think Xbox or Nintendo gamers should be concerned about this either. I don't think they're going to have anything taken away from them, you know.
No, certainly not. The only thing I was thinking about really was actually going the other way, and when PlayStation start bringing their games to PC.
Yeah.
Currently they've been doing that through Steam. Do we maybe start to see something happen with the Epic Games Store? I don't know. That's the only other thing that I'm sort of thinking about. But in reality, I think that this is very much a business decision. Do you know what I mean? It's not necessarily for the consumer, you know?
No, exactly, yeah.
And coming around to the metaverse stuff, Lewis, considering that we don't really know what a metaverse actually is supposed to be, it's all very nebulous right now. We don't really know how it's supposed to work. It's all very vague and wishy-washy. So this might be a hard question to answer, to be honest, but what do you think an epic metaverse actually looks like? Or what do you think that means to them, I suppose?
Oh, I'm sure at the moment it just means a big potential pot of cash and probably not a great deal more than that. Because, yeah, like you say, like every company seems to have their own vision of this at the moment. Not a single one has provided any real detail or any information that makes it seem remotely interesting to me, to be honest, or anything more than a sort of glorified shop meets me-verse, essentially. I don't really get this metaverse push. I do think, you know, Epic have shown us that through Fortnite they can do something approaching this kind of metaverse idea with things like the big Travis Scott concert or the Ariana Grande concert that they've hosted within the game.
Sure.
I can imagine that might be where this ends up. It's just a way. If you've got a party on PlayStation, you can go and meet your friends with an avatar in third person, essentially, rather than just talking over your microphone. I find it hard to imagine that like tens of millions of gamers are going to do that. Maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know. I don't really see it though.
I don't really see it either, mate, if I'm totally honest with you. I wonder if this doesn't turn out to be more of like a platform for things rather than like a metaverse. Do you know what I mean? In the sense that, for example, Facebook had an idea for a metaverse rather than whatever that nonsense was that they were peddling. It's actually just more of a platform for other forms of entertainment, other people to use, you know what I mean? Something like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I agree with you. I really do not see the appeal of this at all. And this also comes off the back of a report that despite huge investment, metaverse games are struggling to retain players. Mm-hmm. Using the term players very loosely, I think shoppers might be more accurate. Because so far as I can tell, these virtual spaces right now are largely being used to fucking peddle NFTs. And annoyingly, Epic have said that they would be open to games that sell NFTs being on the Epic Games Store, which is quite disappointing from Epic, really, who are usually try to be the good guys here, you know what I mean? But that very much would be a negative, if you ask me. But Lewis, this does feed very, very nicely into news item number 2. Ubisoft have announced that Ghost Recon Breakpoint will be receiving no further content updates. According to Kotaku sources as well, the next game in the series has already been in development for over a year and could be releasing as soon as next year. You may also remember Ghost Recon Breakpoint for being a critical and commercial flop by Ubisoft's own admission, Lewis, which contributed to the indefinite, at the time, delays of Watch Dogs Legion, Immortals Phoenix Rising, and Rainbow Six Extraction. But more likely, you're aware of Breakpoint because it is the first game that Ubisoft started selling NFTs in. NFTs, which, if you bothered to buy any, must now be nearly worthless because the game is going to quickly become irrelevant when the next one in the series comes out. It's getting no further support or updates, and the promised secondary market is non-existent because anything that you own from that game, and again, I'm using the term own very loosely to the point where I don't really mean own.
And nor do they.
Yeah, exactly. If you own a piece of code for an item in this game that no one is going to be playing and is going to have basically no use whatsoever, not that it ever really did have a use, but particularly when that game wasn't even very good in the first place. It's just madness to be honest. I think there is also some vague notion sort of kicking about that possibly, maybe, if the stars align correctly on the third weekend of some month, that you might actually be able to take your NFTs from that game to the new game. But I think that that's a lot of work for the dev teams, basically. Yeah. If you hear devs talk about stuff like this and being able to use your NFT assets across different games, it's a fucking nightmare so far as I can work out. There's no guarantee whatsoever that that's going to happen, and that NFT is going to sit there on some blockchain burning away the rainforest for no reason. It's absolutely fucking nonsense. So even at the very first hurdle, Lewis, to me, it has become incredibly transparent that Ubisoft's NFTs are a total fucking grift, as all NFTs are. But despite that, despite overwhelming negative feedback lists, Ubisoft have promised that they will add more NFTs to their future games. I mean, it's absolutely unreal. The thing that is most annoying to me about this, honestly, is that none of this is about making games better.
No.
There's no part of this that is making a video game better. And judging by the most recent efforts by Ubisoft specifically, maybe that's something that they should be concentrating on more than fucking peddling NFTs.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to be able to sell many NFTs in the next Ghost Recon game because it's not going to sell very well, because it's not going to be a very good game unless they've really focused in on that. And yeah, like one of those last points you made there, I think is the proof of all of this being nonsense, is that the whole kind of concept, a lot of the logic that you get from these NFT peddlers is that you can transfer stuff between games. So if you cannot take NFTs from the previous Ghost Recon game into this new one, if that doesn't work, then immediately every single person who has bought into this nonsense should realise that they've been taken for a ride. Because if you can't even do it between Ghost Recon games, one game to another, there's absolutely no chance in hell ever that it's going to be something that you can transfer weapons or skins or items or whatever between games of different series, different companies, different publishers. Like, it is,
that's completely farcical. That is never, ever, ever going to happen. But another big selling point, I think, that they have been sold on, that the people who are interested on this has been sold on, is that they'll make money on this. They'll buy these things and they will appreciate in value, and there'll be a secondary market for them. Who the fuck is buying an NFT for an old Ghost Recon game that wasn't very good?
Yeah.
Like, who's doing that? It's crazy.
Well, that's it. I mean, there's just no way that is actually was ever going to happen, or ever going to happen in the way that they are claiming. You know, the statement from Ubisoft sort of said something along the lines of, you know, we see the end game, and the end game that we see is that players will be able to sell their stuff, and that's better for them. But it's like, well, you haven't actually put that in place. You've made no guarantee that will ever become a thing. And like, do you think that we're total rubes and that you won't be taking a cut of that? Like, what, you'll just give us a secondary marketplace out of the goodness of your heart when you won't allow us to do that with digital copies of your game, for example. So it's just not true. Example. It's just completely untrue. And I think it seems telling that this whole Quartz thing went quiet for a little while, and now you're getting these kind of statements that's like, oh, no, honestly, we're still working at it. I wouldn't be stunned if the team who were pushing that within Ubisoft, who were almost certainly just taken over with mad money lust and saw an opportunity, same as most people involved in the space have been, whether they are now feeling quite sheepish and a bit isolated within the company. Hopefully that is the case, and they're being made to rethink what they're doing. But yeah, everything around this felt to me very much like a team within Ubisoft going like, no, we promise it's still going to come good. And like, the arse is falling out of NFTs already. I mean, the bubble is bursting massively.
I think it definitely is in the video game space. I think that there will be other pushes to make this work. I think there might be many pushes to make this work until one does work, rather infuriatingly. But unfortunately, I don't think NFTs are necessarily going anywhere anytime soon. But as long as gamers continue to push back on them in the way that they've pushed back against many people, but specifically Ubisoft, Team 17 as well, Troy Baker, for fuck's sake, as long as gamers continue to say, no, we don't want this, we think this is actively harming our industry, this industry that we love, get this the fuck away from us. You know what I mean? I think they were good, and I think that it's been a very positive start to the pushback on NFTs, I have to say. Alright, listen, news item number 3. Activision have said that all of their US-based QA testers will become full-time employees and will get a pay increase to at least $20 an hour. I don't know why that's not all QA testers worldwide, although, I mean, obviously the reason for that is money. But still, it's a good start, and particularly in the US, where things like healthcare and various other benefits can be tied to your employment. This would mean that nearly 1,100 US employees would be made permanent and would be getting this pay rise. However, as with all things at Activision, it's not quite as good as it seems, and in actual fact is pretty fucking shady. You may remember that the QA team at Raven Software had made steps to unionise. This was in the face of them losing 30% of the QA staff who were let go in January. This was while Raven were working primarily on Warzone, which at the time was raking in 5.2 million daily, and they let go 30% of their QA staff. They are almost certainly the reason why Activision have turned heel here and went from laying off QA workers to offering them full-time employment and a pay rise. But it has been announced that the unionisers at Ravensoft QA department will be the only department not to get the pay rise. 1,100 staff will be getting a pay rise and will be offered permanent work, except for the ones that are unionising, which makes my blood absolutely fucking boil. The reason for this is that the National Labour Relations Act does not allow employers to, quote, confer benefits on employees during a union organisation campaign to induce employees to vote against the union. So in case that's not clear, Activision have used this piece of labour legislation against the unionisers in an extremely thinly veiled union-busting effort to undermine them, effectively, to make out as if the unionisers have shot themselves in the foot by giving everyone else a pay rise except them.
Oh, man.
Despite the fact that that wouldn't have happened without them, it also undermines just the effectiveness of the union in a sense, showing that the employees who aren't with the union got what they wanted. They didn't need a union and they got what they wanted. Again, despite the fact that it would not have happened without the people in the union. This makes me absolutely furious because it is just corporate bullshit. It is absolute fucking peak. It really, really is. The Raven employees who are unionising, which call themselves the Game Workers Alliance, have made this statement on Twitter.
First of all, we want to say that we are thrilled with today's news. Our fellow QA co-workers in QAMN, QATX and QALA have won FTA status and a raise. We've been organising for this and so much more for all of us. Today proves our collective organising efforts work and we won't stop. Today's announcement by Activision Blizzard to give all temporary and contingent QA team members full-time employment and raises is because of workers organising as a better Activision. And their decision to exclude us, the workers of Game Workers Alliance, is their attempt to divide workers and undermine our right to unionise. It is unsurprising, but nevertheless disappointing that Activision has chosen to exclude Raven Software QA workers who have been at the forefront demanding better pay and benefits from the company-wide wage increase. The company's assertion that the NLRA prevents Activision from including Raven QA workers is simply a ploy to punish us for choosing to stand shoulder to shoulder with our fellow workers as Game Workers Alliance. Activision's announcement is further evidence of the need for all workers at Activision Blizzard to have a protected voice on the job. We strongly urge Activision and Blizzard to rectify the situation and respect our protected right to organise under the law.
Yeah, and I just want to say as well that Activision have also chosen not to recognise them as a union as well, so they're now seeking recognition from like a more national organisation, basically, you know what I mean? Which is good, and I very much hope that they succeed, and I think it is clear that this means that the fight for them is far from over. It is also worth noting that the Game Workers Alliance is actually only officially 34 people, although I think nearly 80% of QA employees at Activision voted in favour of unionisation should it come to a vote. Mm-hmm. But I think that the Game Workers Alliance is literally only 34 people, and I think it is incredibly, incredibly telling that they would rather give full employment and a pay raise to nearly 1,100 people than let 34 people unionise. It is clear that it is more worth it for them to increase those wages, which will be potentially millions of dollars, than let 34 people unionise. They are absolutely fucking terrified of it because, again, it does give the employees a voice. It does give them the ability to fight back against bullshit exactly like this, you know? And they're hiding behind a bit of fucking flimsy legislation, which is such a slap in the face because it's a labour clause, you know what I mean? It's meant to protect the unionisers, not be used by Activision to make them look as if they're losing when everyone else is winning, you know? Despite the fact that it all happened because of them. It's so interesting because it shows both sides of it. Like, they're trying to make them out to look bad, but the reason that they all got a pay rise is because they unionised in the fucking first place.
That's the part you really hope that the staff at Activision and the general public and everyone else kind of really bears that in mind, because it would be easy for a lot of people to be like, well, they got what they wanted, it's all fine, and forget about these 34 people who have kind of been stitched up here. And yeah, like you say, it's particularly galling that they've used legislation that is supposed to prevent big corporations from essentially buying off union or potential unionising staff they've sort of flipped that and used it to punish those who are trying to unionize. And I mean, I just can't see that there's even a legal footing there. I'm sure they've got their best lawyers working on it, but surely the argument would be, well, you're not giving us any benefit that would make us vote against the union, which is what the law is trying to prevent. You're giving us the same benefits that all of our colleagues has, which is surely just about equality in employment. So it's, grubby shit as ever from Activision. It gets worse and worse. I really hope that someone from Microsoft might at some point, not that they have control or power yet, but they could put a phone call in and say, this is some bullshit and we're not happy about this. But probably they don't want it to happen either, or potentially they don't want it to happen.
Fucking don't. They definitely don't want this to happen.
The wider point about what you were starting to say there about, like, they're so fearful of unions. It's like, it's not just Activision, actually, and it's not just this part of Activision. They want to stop this union from happening so that other people across the Activision Blizzard portfolio don't get the same idea. And I'm sure there'll be people in other big games companies and other big tech companies generally coming to them and saying, I'm going to put a stop to this because we don't want it to happen in our place either, So it's a great moment for the people who are getting the pay rise, and it's a good step forward for the labour relations for those people. But yeah, another fucking horrible twist in the tail from old Activision, who you just can't help but hate these days.
You really can't. I've got to say, when I first read the headline that Activision are offering $20 minimum
felt
pay
like
rise,
a victory,
when
right?
I read this headline, I was like, oh fucking hell, this is great. And then when I was reading down the article and it got to the bit apart from the people who are unionising, I was like, now it all makes sense. Totally. Now it all makes sense suddenly. Really let that sit in. 1,100 people have got a pay rise and have been guaranteed permanent work, so that 34 people couldn't unionise. That should weigh heavy on your mind. Very, very heavy, because it is really telling of what these people fear, because it could actually make a fucking difference. Do you know what I mean? Alright, let's news item number 4. Certain Affinity are hiring quote-unquote experienced Xbox devs, allegedly for an Xbox exclusive Monster Hunter style co-op game. Jeff Grubb claimed that Certain Affinity were working on a Monster Hunter-esque game back in January. He also claimed that the reason that they were doing this was because Xbox wanted to diversify the games that they were putting on Games Pass, basically, and this was an example of that. Certain Affinity, for those that don't know, have worked extensively with Xbox in the past as a support studio, specifically on Halo. They even worked on Halo Infinite, but they've also worked on Halo as far back as Halo 2, which isn't a surprise when you realise that they are made up entirely of ex-Bungie devs, it seems. But they have also worked on multiple Call of Duty games, and they even worked on Doom 2016 with id. So the FPS genre is very, very much in their DNA, it seems. However, I hope that the game that they're making isn't just a first-person Monster Hunter with guns game, Basically because I don't think that really diversifies things for Games Pass and for Xbox. I've said on this podcast before that because Xbox really blossomed in the 360 era, where it was totally dominating, a lot of its IP grew up at that time. And while they were dominating, the FPS genre was dominating at the exact same time. So while at the time they were absolutely killing it when they were bringing out Halo and Gears, do you know what I mean? Right now, I don't know, like maybe I'm getting off the wrong vibe, but it feels very much as though, I don't know, it feels as though their history is weighing them down now in Gears of War and Halo specifically. And of like the 3 games that Xbox put out with real consistency, being Halo, Gears and Forza, 2 of them involve shooting monsters in the face, like as a main feature of the game, So yeah, I hope it's not that. I hope it's something sort of new and fresh and exciting, but that studio's history seems very, very tied into the FPS genre, if I'm totally honest. So we'll see what comes of it, but an interesting development nonetheless.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I don't want to write it off before we've seen anything or before it's even been confirmed.
Definitely not.
Because I mean, even if it does end up being a first-person kind of Monster Hunter with guns, there's still ways of doing that could be interesting, and if they've got the skills from their history. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's the biggest point to make about Xbox's kind of development history, really, is that it has been over-reliant on some core franchises that, as you say, 100% they matured in the same time as the FPS boom. And I think basically until Xbox started buying studios in the last couple of years, that was their kind of doom in a lot of ways. It has really weighed them down, as you said. It's been hard to break away from that and to feel fresh. And the way that they've got around that really is by buying up other teams and injecting their games into Game Pass. So it's interesting to think of this as a way of diversifying Game Pass, because they are about to drop like the entire catalogue of Activision Blizzard, and they have added all the Bethesda games and everything else that's coming with that.
Well, I think that this predates the Activision deal, at least. At least it's probably been at least storyboarded for a while.
Exactly,
you know?
At least early stage development will have been going on for a while. And I do think, honestly, when you look at games that kind of echo Monster Hunter is about, I mean, there's elements of Monster Hunter's DNA in like The Witcher and in Horizon for sure. You could see an argument for a good Xbox version of that, but yeah, it does need to be something that feels fresh and isn't. I mean, you can totally imagine a world where it ends up being Halo Monster Hunter. You know what I mean? Like they've got a bad history of just, you know, even they had that Gears Tactics last year, which by all accounts, or a couple of years ago, by all accounts that was great, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. But again, it's like everything falls back into some of their core franchises, and it might be time just to be like, same as PlayStation did in the PS4 generation. They introduced 2 or 3 completely new IPs and kind of went, this is the future now. So,
well, yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, PlayStation really started that in the PS3 generation when they were behind, because they had to do something. I mean, they had to shake things up, you know what I mean? Then we got The Last of Us, we got Uncharted, then subsequently in the PS4 generation we got the God of War reboot, we get the
Horizon
Spider-Man
Ghost
reboot
is what
as
I was
well,
thinking
you know
of,
what I mean? Horizon, Ghost, so PlayStation have really moved on with our franchises, you know what I mean? Whereas Xbox still just feels so tied back to that generation, you know what I mean? And they could really use something fresh. And don't get me wrong, they bought every bloody studio under the sun now, so they're going to have plenty of fresh stuff. But I mean, it'd just be good to see them developing some fresh stuff, do you know what I mean? Rather than it being down to Activision or Bethesda or some of these studios that already had games in development before.
And they're all very tied into their major franchises as well, you know, Fallout.
Well, some of them are, you know what I mean?
So
but I think like Obsidian and Ninja Theory and people like that could spin off and do loads of stuff.
Totally.
Do you know what I mean?
That's where your diversity's coming in for sure, yeah.
Well, I agree. Nonetheless, very interesting to see what comes of this, because Monster Hunter World specifically was a huge hit, so if they can capitalise on that in any capacity, I'm sure there will be an audience for it. Alright, let's finish off as we always do with a couple of shout outs. Shout out number 1, Moss Book 2 reviews are in this week, which is actually late, because so far as I can work out, this game actually came out on March the 31st. But for example, IGN's review is dated for 5 days ago, so I'm not quite sure what was happening with review codes and whatever. However, the game is currently sitting with a very respectable indeed 84 on Metacritic. For those that don't know, Moss was a PSVR exclusive game, this being the sequel to that. And the first game had like a lot of fanfare around it, do you know what I mean?
Did, yeah.
And by all accounts, Book 2 seems to be building on the original, seems to be a very good game in its own right, but seems to have come out with nearly no fanfare whatsoever, considering that it might be, well, at least as good, if not better than the original game, and considering that PSVR 2 is like imminently on the horizon. It seems like a very strange move from PlayStation.
Yeah, I agree. It's come in kind of cold. There wasn't a lot of fanfare around it at all. But by all accounts, this does look great. And if you've got a PSVR, it seems like definitely a game to be checking out, because the first one was really beloved and seemed to be doing quite interesting things. I'd be curious to find out why this has happened. Maybe it is, you know, they just couldn't get review codes out on time. Maybe it is simply just because of the nature of needing people to use PSVR, and a lot of reviewers will now be on PS5 and they probably don't have their old VR units hooked up to that. I don't know. There could be some reasons for it, but ignore all that and give it a shot if you've got PSVR, because it seems like it'll definitely be worth a go.
Yeah, definitely, man, definitely. Alright, shout out number 2. It has been announced that Remedy have entered an agreement with Rockstar to remake the first 2 Max Payne games, which when I first heard this, I thought was fantastic news, because the first 2 games, specifically the first game, were absolutely fantastic. Really, really, really great. I distinctly remember playing them round at your house, Lewis, when we were kids, when we were far, far, far too young to be playing those games, really. But I do distinctly have very fond memories of that game. You know, I mean, I thought those games were really, really good. And I think a lot of other people have really fond memories of that game as well. I really hope that they do this remake justice. While I very much trust Remedy in this situation, Rockstar haven't exactly got the best reputation when it comes to remakes, considering those god-awful GTA trilogy remakes. I mean, my god. However, I'm hoping that Remedy gets the bulk of the work here and Rockstar are just working as the publisher and just let them get on with it, sort of thing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I really hope this is just Rockstar pushing a more or less AAA budget towards Remedy to create something here from I mean, I think they are going to have to basically build this from scratch, because those games, particularly the first Max Payne game, was out so long ago that it won't feel good to play if they just kind of up-res it and give it a paint. This is going to need a full-scale rework. I haven't got around to playing the Alan Wake remaster yet, though. I wonder if that would be a telling sort of example of how good Remedy will approach these things.
So far as I'm aware that it was a good remaster. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't think it was blowing the doors off anybody, but I think it was a perfectly competent remaster, which is really all I'm asking for.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, that reviewed really well, well enough, and also that was just a remaster. It was just polishing it up, and it's not that old a game. This is the challenge for Remedy here, is to essentially rebuild Max Payne, and I don't know how you loop into the tone of that game in some ways, because it was very of its time in certain regards, but a really stylish game, a really atmospheric game, hard-boiled detective kind of thing, but with Matrix-style action. If you've never played the Max Payne games, probably don't go and play the originals now, because they might feel like shit, but go and watch it on YouTube, because they were great stories, really well told, really violent and dark. There's those dream sequences from the first game that were absolutely haunting. Man. It still can kind of see them in my mind's eye, and like you said, we were definitely too young to be playing them. But I was really excited to see this news. I hope that they do it justice. If they do, I'll definitely be playing it.
Definitely. I mean, how does a gritty sort of detective noir thing mixed with Matrix combat not sound fantastic? You could go into any pitch meeting surely and sell that. Alright, let's shout out number 3. Kingdom Hearts 4 has been announced. This was announced along with Kingdom Hearts Missing Link, which is a mobile game. Both of them were announced on the 20th anniversary of the series. While the game is apparently in early development, which means it's probably quite a long way away, we did actually get to see some gameplay, which looked pretty good. I also think that the world now looks way, way, way more realistic. They're clearly going for a far more photorealistic art style this time around. And I believe I read somewhere just before we started recording that this game will ultimately be made in Epic's new UE5 engine as well, and we all know how good that looks. Yeah. There was also a tease at the end, which I've seen people speculate to be like a Star Wars tie-in. To me, that seems absolutely unbelievable, but there does actually seem to be substance to that rumour, believe it or not. However, Lewis, I watched the trailer. It was all in Japanese. I don't even know if there is an English version, but the one that I watched was in Japanese with English subtitles. And to me, the biggest treat of it all was hearing Goofy and Donald Duck speak in Japanese. That was absolutely fucking delightful. And Lewis, I can feel that you are wondering, did they still do the Daft Donald Duck voice in Japanese? And the answer, delightfully, is yes. Yes, they did.
God, I hadn't even thought about that before.
Ultimately, this series' very existence still continues to absolutely baffle me, Lewis, quite frankly. But it has a whole host of fans who absolutely love it. There was a whole load of people that were very, very excited for this announcement. So I really hope that it's a good game when it finally comes out, and I do hope that it isn't too long down the road.
Yeah, just to echo that point, really, that it felt like such an enormous gap between Kingdom Hearts 2 and 3, and to already have a 4 announced now, it seems kind of unbelievable in its way, but maybe they've just seen that there is so much fan clamour there for more, and therefore so much money to be made, quite cynically. Yep. You're right, quite an impressive trailer. Remains to be seen how much of that will end up being actual gameplay and how much of it is just a video with a UI slapped on top of it.
I think we're very, very early doors, like very early doors here. But I mean, I think that the thing that they were showing you, like with the grappling hook and stuff like that when he was jumping about, like I think that's new. The movement looked very fluid, so even if they can get anywhere close to that, it looked good.
Yeah,
it looked good.
It looked
really
like
did.
Really refreshed in a way that series needs. It's still, like you said, kind of baffles me slightly, but fair enough. And I'm sure loads of people are going to be dead excited for it when it does eventually come around, or even when we start to see a bit more of it.
Yeah, definitely. And if there's a surefire way to get Disney on board, it is that there's money to be made there. So there we go. Alright, and final shout out number 4. Mario Golf has been announced as the next N64 game coming to Nintendo Switch Online. Now, I know that there have been several N64 games that have come to Switch Online since it's launched, most notably Majora's Mask, which we didn't really give too much time on the podcast. However, one of the best things to come out of Nintendo Switch Online, Loss, I think, is our newfound love for open tournament golf, which is the NES original golf game, basically, by Nintendo, that is so old and so much less popular than Mario Golf. It is unbelievable. However, me and Lewis have absolutely fallen in love with it. So weirdly, Lewis, I think that this is probably going to be the thing that gets me to buy the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack, simply so I can get that N64 emulator, simply so I can play you at Mario Golf.
It does feel slightly blasphemous that with some of the games that have come to the service, but
Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask are on there, and this is what's got me over the line.
But yeah, I mean, sometimes you just find that. We started playing open tournament golf, I mean, years ago now, really. And
oh yeah, when it first came out, basically, when the NES games first appeared.
We just kept trying various of the sports games on that service, and we got stuck into that, and we've played it ever since. It's really stuck with us. So if this Mario Golf Edition feels like just getting more courses, that will be perfect. I hope they haven't overcomplicated it.
Oh man, it's a massive upgrade. Have you not seen it compared to that one?
No,
Jesus, it's such a better game.
I just hope they haven't added too much newfangled technology and ruined the simplicity of their beloved
newfangled technology
game.
On the SNES. Anyway, I think you can tell with our glee that we're both very much looking forward to it. Alright, Liz, I think it's time for a beer, and then we'll be back for Topic of the Week. And we are back for Topic of the Week. Topic of the Week this week is the results of our BAFTA predictions list. The BAFTA Awards were last week, and I think that we just get right stuck into this with Best Game.
So your nominations for Best Game were Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, It Takes Two, Inscription, Forza Horizon 5, Deathloop, and your winner, Mark, was Returnal.
Yes! Now, if I had any balls, I would have picked that myself, Liz. Honestly, I am so affronted with myself that I did not pick Returnal, which was actually my game of the year last year. Instead, I picked It Takes Two and you picked Deathloop. So we got no points there, but I'm delighted with the result.
Yeah, me too. I'm really chuffed for Returnal. It felt like it got a big snub at the other award shows. And similar to you, I kind of talked myself out of picking it when we were doing this. So glad to see that it won, but no use for us.
No, unfortunately not. Alright, Liz, after that was Artistic Achievement.
So your nominees for this were Returnal, Resident Evil Village, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Psychonauts 2, It Takes Two, and the winner was the Artful Escape, Mark.
Yes, which this man picked. Yes, he did. It had Artful in the title. What else do you need? What else do you need, Liz?
I mean, that's a cheap reason to give it an award, but fair enough. No, I'm pleased to see this take it. It'll be really interesting, given that it's our play-along game this month, to see if we sort of agree with that. I'm a bit annoyed at myself for picking Ratchet & Clank, which I'm generally quite down on Ratchet & Clank as a game.
Yeah, I know you are. I was surprised at that pick for you.
But, if it's got anything going for it, it's that it's visually really impressive, so I think that's why I went for it, but really keen to see what the Artful Escape is packing.
Alright, Liz, after that was Game Design.
And your nominees for this were Returnal, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, It Takes Two, Forza Horizon 5, Deathloop, and the winner, Mark, a bit of a surprise on this one maybe, was Inscription.
First of a few surprises, Lewis, I've got to say, but yeah, that is a big surprise. We both picked It Takes Two. I think that was the only category we both picked the same game.
Right?
And we both got
good.
it wrong completely. I think what Inscription is doing is pretty impressive with its game. You know what I mean? People were absolutely loving it. I still want to get around to playing it at some point as well. Very happy to see indies win almost always. So fantastic. Thumbs up for me. Next up was Animation List.
And your nominees for this were Psychonauts 2, Life is Strange True Colours, Kena Bridge of Spirits, It Takes Two, Call of Duty Vanguard, and the winner, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart.
Which your man picked again, Liz. Absolutely killing it here. Again, I think that the animation in Ratchet & Clank speaks for itself. It is absolutely insane, and Insomniac done a ridiculous job on that game, really. Don't get me wrong, I think Kenna was probably a strong second, I would say there. But yeah, Ratchet & Clank definitely deserves it, I think. After that was Audio Achievement List.
So your nominees here are Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, Halo Infinite, Deathloop, Call of Duty Vanguard, The Artful Escape, and your winner, which was Returnal.
Which makes it 3 for Mark. 3 points to Mark. Yeah, again, Returnal. I think we can both agree, Liz, that the audio design in Returnal is insane.
Absolutely superb, yeah. And a really worthy winner of this award in what is quite a strong category for that kind of audio design side of things. But yeah, great to see that, particularly with its use of the 3D sound on PlayStation 5.
Definitely.
Yeah, really well done.
After that was music.
So your nominees for this were Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Psychonauts 2, Halo Infinite, Far Cry 6, Deathloop, and your winner again, Mark, was Returnal.
You might begin to see a pattern here. Returnal done quite well at these awards, despite being completely snubbed almost at the Game Awards, particularly from Game of the Year, notably. You picked Deathloop for this, I picked Halo. I've got to say, I thought this was a wee bit of a surprise win. While I think that the music in Returnal's is great, is perfectly fine, certainly, but I never thought it was anything particularly special. You picked Deathloop. I think that had such style and intrigue about its music. Do you know what I mean? Halo, obviously a drop-dead classic when it comes to gaming music. But yeah, Returnal takes over the two of them.
Yeah, I can't say I remember the music all that well from Returnal. Certainly, my pick, Deathloop, music is quite a big part of the scene setting and the atmosphere of that game. It really tells you where you are in time.
Absolutely.
But no, fair enough. I mean, Returnal's, it was the most nominated game at this award show, and it's no surprise that it's doing as well as it has done.
Next up after that was Narrative, Lewis.
So your nominees here were Returnal, Psychonauts 2, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, Life is Strange True Colours, It Takes Two, and perhaps the most surprising result of the night.
An incredibly surprising result.
Your winner is Unpacking, Mark.
Unpacking, and I'm just going to drop this in here right now as well, Liz. We didn't predict a couple of categories here, the multiplayer categories mainly, but another one that we didn't predict was the EE Game of the Year, which is the fan-voted Game of the Year, which was also, incredibly, won by Unpacking. So they walked away with 2 BAFTAs after this for such a tiny little, simple in concept anyway, indie game that just resonated with a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, just a different slice of gaming, really. It was quite an unusual type of game, and I mean, I've played some of it, and the way it delivers its narrative is really intriguing. I'm not sure to what extent that narrative kind of develops, but seemingly it must go in some pretty interesting directions to have scooped this award. But incredible result for a tiny team with a pretty small game. In the narrative category, I mean, you've heard there the kinds of games they're beating, like Returnal and It Takes Two, and that fan voted one they also beat out: Deathloop, Chicory, It Takes Two, Metroid Dread. I mean, these are huge games, and it won, so fantastic.
I mean, you chose Guardians of the Galaxy for this, which took it at the Game Awards, I believe, and I chose Life is Strange, a game that is all about its narrative and has a lineage of very good narratives and very good writing in the series. Yeah, to take it over them, I mean, fair play to them. I'm absolutely delighted for that result. Always happy to see the small games win.
Absolutely.
Always happy to see it.
Yeah.
After that was Technical Achievement.
So your nominees here were Returnal, Resident Evil Village, Psychonauts 2, Hitman 3, Forza Horizon 5, and the winner, which was Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart.
Which makes it 4 for Mark. Oh, yes. Don't get me wrong. I think that you chose Forza. I thought that was a fantastic technical achievement in and of
I
itself.
still think it might edge it for me, to be honest.
Well, I mean, fair enough. I think that what Ratchet & Clank were doing with the graphics on there and the way that you could zoom into Ratchet's individual strands of hair and all that was insane. What they were doing with the sort of world swapping instantly off the SSD and all that sort of technological things is what they're awarding here. Do you know what I mean? So I understand why someone would look immediately at Forza and go, well, actually, that's clearly better. But I think when you burrow down into it, Ratchet & Clank was doing some pretty insane stuff in reality. After that was Best British Game, Lewis. Obviously very specific to the BAFTA Awards, this one. Yeah,
it was indeed. But a good little category of nominations, which were Sable, Overboard, Fights in Tight Spaces, Death's Door, Alba, A Wildlife Adventure, and probably the inevitable winner, really, Forza Horizon 5.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you picked Death's Door, which was an admirable pick, because I think at this point we'd basically decided we weren't going to pick the same things as one another, and I picked Forza, because, I mean, it was always going to win that. It was a gigantic title compared to the other ones. I would have loved to have seen literally anything else win this, just because it would have been a small game overcoming Forza, but, I mean, I sort of think that's justice. I think the best game there probably was Forza Horizon.
Across the broad spectrum, including the kind of technical aspects of it, fair enough. And that is exactly what happened. I mean, I was picking Forza until we realised we were kind of diverging on all of them, so not to do that. But, I think that's just a brilliant category. Apart from anything, it's a bunch of really interesting games, quite small games, right up to Forza Horizon 5, which is enormous. So it's great to see that, our industry being celebrated like this, and fair play to all the nominees there. It
shows the health, I think, of the British gaming industry,
and the variety of it,
which is just fantastic. Do you know what I mean? And you've got everything from tiny little games right up to Forza Horizon. So there you go. After that was Best Debut Game.
Nominees were Maquette, Genesis Noir, The Forgotten City, Eastward, The Artful Escape, and the winner, which was Toem.
This was a wee bit of a surprise for me as well, man. I
definitely.
thought momentum-wise, the Artful Escape, for me, seemed like it was the strong favourite here. I know that you're enamoured with the Forgotten City, but yeah, to him, man. I'm happy for it. I'm really happy for it. It's just another little quirky, cool indie game that has a really interesting concept that is clearly resonated with people, and I don't think that it doesn't deserve this. Do you know what I mean? It's just great to see a lot of these smaller games getting recognised.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. And not at all of these games bring something different to the table and could kind of each have scooped it for different reasons. I really enjoyed Genesis Noir as well, and I'm looking forward to diving into the Artful Escape. So to give it to any of them, fair enough. Toem has never jumped out to me as something that I'd be desperate to play, but it's definitely got a community. A lot of people really loved it when it came out, so fair enough to that.
Yeah, great style about it as well. Like, really lovely little game. Just quite surprising that it beat out some of the other categories, I would say. Alright, after that was Best Family Game, Lewis.
Nominations for this were Unpacking, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Mario Party Superstars, Forza Horizon 5, Alba, A Wildlife Adventure, and your winner, which was Chicory, A Colourful Tale.
And that means that Lewis is on the board, finally.
And I think if I remember rightly, this was one that it was a bit of a throwaway because you'd picked Ratchet and Clank, and I wasn't really having Forza as a family game, so I think I just chose Chicory.
I mean, fair play to you, man. I'm quite glad to see Chicory getting an award, to be honest with you, because when it came out, it really had a little moment there, where a lot of people were after it. It reviewed really, really well as well. I genuinely thought Ratchet & Clank was a near dead cert to win this. But again, it's great to see these little games jumping over these enormous AAA titles, you know what I mean, to catch these awards. It's awesome. Absolutely fantastic. Next up was Game Beyond Entertainment.
Nominations were Psychonauts 2, It Takes Two, Game Builder Garage, Chicory, A Colourful Tale, Alba, A Wildlife Adventure, and your winner, which was Before Your Eyes.
Which Lewis also picked. So 2 back-to-back there, Lewis. Well done.
Thanks very much.
I took It Takes Two. To be honest with you, that was a weak pick. I shouldn't have picked that there. I think Before Your Eyes is an incredible concept for a game. I really want to play it at some point myself, so very happy to see it take these awards, to be honest with you. It's all the wee ones. It's all the indies. I love it.
Yeah, if you don't know anything about this, it uses sort of eye tracking to tell its story. I'm not too certain how that actually manifests moment to moment, but it's one that I'm dead keen to play just because it seems so out there. And yeah, a category that otherwise was maybe a little weak for one of these sort of games for impact type categories, but I think a really worthy winner there. So
no, definitely. I think it's a really, really interesting concept for a game. If you've never heard of it, go and look it up. It looks awesome. I definitely want to play it at some point. After that, Lewis, was original property, whatever that means. I still don't know.
Your nominations here were Unpacking, Returnal, Inscription, Death's Door, Deathloop, and the winner, which was It Takes Two.
It Takes Two, yeah, so you went for Returnal on this one, and I went for Deathloop. And the winner, It Takes Two, I mean, to be honest with you, it could have went any way here at all. I think it really could have done. It was a bit of a shot in the dark. I thought Deathloop would win something, and I don't think it won anything, which was quite surprising.
No.
Yeah, but nice to see It Takes Two take it. Again, there's another indie game, so thumbs up from me. I know it's a bigger one, but still.
Well, yeah, I think it's odd to me that Returnal wins Game of the Year but doesn't win Original Property of the Year.
I know,
but,
what's that about, right? Yeah.
Like you say, it's good for a game like It Takes Two to get its reward as well. It was also one of the most nominated games and took away just 2 awards in the end, but still, that's better than most did, so fair enough.
Certainly. After that, Lewis, was Best Performer in a Leading Role.
Nominations here, and apologies for any badly pronounced names, were Erica Mori as Alex Chen in Life is Strange, John McLaren as Star-Lord in Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, Jennifer Hale as Rivet in Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Jason E. Kelly as Colt in Deathloop, Ozioma Akaga as Juliana in Deathloop, and the winner was Jane Perry as Celine in Returnal.
I am a bit surprised at this one as well, if I'm totally honest with you. No discreditation to her performance. It was fantastic. It genuinely was really, really very good. However, I felt as though, due to no fault of her own, just due to the writing, due to the character she was portraying, it was quite one-dimensional. Is that fair to say? That sounds like a horrible insult, but I really don't mean it that way. Whereas I felt as though maybe some others had an opportunity to do more with the role than she did, But I mean, fair fucks, man. She was great in Returnal. She was absolutely fantastic. She carried the whole game. I think she was the only character with lines just about,
Pretty much, yeah. No, I think that's a fair point to make, like it's so centred on her, and as much as she maybe doesn't have tons to do with the character, still a great performance with what she's been given, so yeah, fair enough there.
And finally, Lewis, was Best Performer in a Supporting Role. I love this category. Great category. Game Awards need to go on that.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that, yeah. So your nominees here were Alex Weiner as Rocket in Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, Han Soto as Gabe Chen in Life is Strange: True Colours, Maggie Robertson as Lady Dimitrescu in Resident Evil Village, Jason Cavalier as Drax in Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, Laura Bailey as Polina Petrova in Call of Duty Vanguard, and that makes your winner, Mark, Kimberly Brooks as Hollis Forsyth in Psychonauts 2.
And Mark picked it. I cannot believe this one, Lewis. I was delighted to see this. I thought Maggie Robertson as Lady Dimitrescu, who walked away with the main award at the Game Awards, was a dead cert to win this. You picked first and you went for her. If I'd picked first, I would have went for her as well. I have no problem admitting that. Kimberly Brooks' performance as Hollis Forsyth in Psychonauts 2 is absolutely fantastic. It is easily the standout performance of that game, as far as I'm concerned. She was one of the new characters from the first game. She was great. I picked her, honestly, on a gut feeling because I just thought, yep, her performance was fantastic. But I really did think Maggie Robertson had this one sewn up, of what I say.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I'm still uncertain whether I think that Maggie Robertson's performance is like the best performance of the year in the way that the Game Awards recognised it, but it seemed like a shoe-in for all sorts of reasons, and particularly given this was like the support and role category, she does seem like the standout. But I haven't really seen much of the Psychonauts 2 performance from Kimberly Brooks, but you've sung its praises even before we got to this category and before we were doing this BAFTA Awards predictions thing. So I think that's fair enough. And you know, again, great to have a category like this which allows some of the other performances in a game that aren't your lead characters to be recognised, because often it's those NPCs or those villains or whatever that really elevate a game, so they deserve to be part of it as well.
Don't get me wrong, Maggie Robertson's portrayal of Lady Dimitrescu was absolutely fantastic as well. I'm not detracting from that at all, but Kimberly Brooks, fantastic performance, thoroughly deserved the award. And Lewis, by a devastating score of 6-2, I have once again won. Lewis, you are rubbish at this.
I mean,
you're terrible at this.
Not great. And I have a litany of excuses that I wouldn't bother going through.
Of course you do. Okay, hold on. I'll sit back.
But 2 quick points. I mean, you got 6 points. We did do 15 awards. It's not a great return from you either.
And yet, still better than you.
Absolutely fair enough. But my second kind of slight defence is that, you know, other than maybe should have leaned towards Returnal for some more of the categories, there's quite a lot of minor or major surprises within those winners. It's quite
I would agree with that.
I would agree
selection. With that, definitely.
So, you know, this is the first time we've done the BAFTAs. I quite enjoyed doing it because it did feel a little bit different to the Game Awards, which at times can feel a little bit like a popularity contest, because you can often this game in this category will definitely have been played by everyone, whereas this other nomination is an indie game that only a third of the people voting will have played. This feels like a little different to that, and great to see some fantastic games be recognised. So I don't mind losing, really. I don't pay that much attention to award shows other than when we're
it's
doing
a
them.
Bit of fun, Lewis.
Exactly.
But that does mean
that
all
fun comes with punishment.
All fun comes with punishment. It does mean once again I have the God-given right to make you play a game. However, Lewis, I understand that you still have, from losing this competition twice before, you still have Nier Automata to play, I believe, and the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which, with all the will in the world, are 2 quite large games in a year that is full of other games that you want to play. I appreciate this. So I'm going to be very kind to you here and pick a game which I know that you haven't played, which I know that you want to play, and is very short. On how long to beat, I think it is between 4 and 5 hours, so it's very short.
Sounds manageable.
And I think we can also tie it into being one of our play-along games whenever you decide to play it, we will say. Okay?
All right. Okay,
so I think that we can wrap it all in nicely, and hopefully it doesn't burden you too much, because part of this is, as I was saying, it's a bit of fun, and I don't want you to start resenting these games. Do you know what I mean? Part of the reason that I nominate the games that I do for you to play is because I think that they're great, and I want you to like them. Do you know what I mean? So I definitely don't want to do it as a fucking punishment or anything like that at all. So the game, Lewis, is Firewatch.
Oh, nice. Yeah, fair enough.
Which you've not played. I've played and think is fantastic. I'm frankly stunned you've not played it, to be honest with you, because it's right up your street. And yeah, I think it would fit really nicely into one of our play-along games as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's been on my list to play for so long. I've started it once or twice and just always got distracted by something much bigger than it. So yeah, I'd be really up for finally kind of making my way through that. And yeah, it's one that we've kind of talked about in the past as potentially doing as a play-along. So I think it makes sense to do it. Yeah,
it might be on our big big list of potential play-along games somewhere. And a very nice thing, I think, that you could potentially break up your months of playing Elden Ring.
Absolutely, yeah.
Alright, Lewis, I think we'll have to call it a day there. I'd like to remind everyone that you can find PlayersToo on all the social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com. That's PlayerSToo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, that really helps us out. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. And while you're over there, if you could leave us a little review as well, again, that just helps us out even more. And thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. It genuinely does mean a lot. I'd like to remind everyone that our play-along game for this month, as we've already mentioned, is the Artful Escape. I've got it downloaded off Games Pass already. It is available on Games Pass. No excuse not to play along with us. Very much looking forward to this one, particularly because it's come away with another couple of awards here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really exciting one, especially hyped to play it now after this.
Yeah, definitely, man. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week.
Thanks.